right, we're going to call the Special Education, Alternative Education, Early College meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Mr. Agia?
Here.
Ms. Larrabee? Here. Ms. Roberts? Here.
Please rise for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. So welcome, everyone. We're going to jump right into the agenda. And is there any citizen input? There's no citizen input time. We're going to jump right into the first discussion, and it's a Evolve update.
Okay. I'm going to pass these down that way. 3, 4. Pass those down. They just have the printed out links that were embedded in them.
Got it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I just wanted to give an update on enrollment data, some of the GLOws and the GROWs for the Evolve pathway at Durfee. Currently we have 67 students, and they're pretty equal in terms of grades 10, 11, and 12. 31 of our students have disabilities, with 14 students on IEPs and 7 with 504 plans. Our year-to-date attendance that we are working on improving is 76.4%. And after our Q2 grades came in, we have 60% of students demonstrating competencies so far. Some of our GLOws, things that we are very proud of, are that we have finalized our portrait of a graduate, which you'll see on the first page. And this portrait of a graduate has been featured in an upcoming op-ed for the Bar Foundation that's going to be published with the learning agenda. And it also has student work from 2 of our TLEs, the Students in the Law TLE and the My POV TLE, along with some of the student feedback. So that will be published along with that portrait of a graduate. We also launched the Evolve Teaching Assistants pilot this last term, which we have 4 seniors who have demonstrated competencies in certain subject areas, and we're able to give them a leadership opportunity where they've teamed up with some of the teachers, and they do co-planning and co-teaching for a class with one of the teachers. And it's a way for the students who are interested in going into the field of education to pair up with teachers and also work on their leadership skills with the teachers. We're also sharing that out this week with other schools at a retreat. Another piece that we're proud of is our Term 2 competency exhibition. So you will see that on the next page. This is just a printout of the slides from that competency exhibition. And we had 16 students get in front of the entire group, which was really impressive. And they volunteered to share out their final projects from Term 2. And it was a very successful event where we could really showcase some student learning, and students can really take a lot of pride in their work. We have, as for our graduates, we will have 22 on track to graduate in June. 5 of them are looking like an August graduation, and again, all of our students that we onboard are off track by at least a year and a half. So we were able to get 22 of those students back on track to graduate on time. We have some students in School to Career who are finding a lot of success. We have 8 students doing that. And we also have been invited to join the Canopy Project, which is a nationwide project for schools that are showing promise and innovation. And it is like a website, an organization that catalogs all the information from different innovative models, and it helps other schools in their pursuit of designing new innovative school models. So we were just invited to join the Canopy. We also are continuing with a lot of transformative project-based groups. So you'll see that in the next page over. There's a bunch of slides that kind of highlight different types of activities we've been doing with students. The transformative SEL groups, they are non-academic short-term projects where students students are able to collaborate and build relationships with their peers. They're usually an hour long for a lot of these projects. So you can see pictures of all the different activities a lot of the kids have been doing. Usually we do those every other Friday. So that's a different type of transformative SEL that we are piloting. As for some of our grows, we just completed a very robust full 8-hour day training for teaching into the competencies. We did that during the February vacation, and it was a lot of our staff practicing different types of moves and teaching and embedding competencies along the competency cycle. So I did include on the next page some of that information about what that training entailed. And again, that we work with our partner SpringPoint on how to teach into the competencies, which is a really nuanced, new type of skill. So we're really fortunate that we get that support to learn those skills as a staff. Another grow is that we are looking into adopting the Lift learning platform, which is after the slides. You'll see a slide in the back for Lift. This just kind of overviews what that platform can do for students. It's a competency-based platform. So it has online portfolios where kids can upload their work. It actually tracks how they're meeting competencies over the course of their time in school. So you can actually do comparative data analysis about how many competencies kids are showing when they start versus how many they're able to in their growth over time. And the great feature of that is also that they get to build their own courses in this. So it's something that a lot of the seniors can do, is like build and design their own courses and backwards map how they're demonstrating certain types of competencies. So that's also another feature of this platform that we're looking into. Another one of our goals is that we have 2 very big site visits coming up in April, and it's a way for us to really get a lot of holistic feedback on what we need to improve upon as a model. So we have SpringPoint and SRI International, which is an educational research group that are coming in, and we're being evaluated on what's called the indicators of school quality. So you'll see that on the last page. There are 7 of those indicators of school quality, and they will give us a very thorough, like 25-page analysis of each one of these indicators and different positive feedback in areas of how we can improve each one of those. So we're really looking forward to those 2 site visits. Next year, we're also looking to grow enrollment up to 100 students, and also looking to onboard additional staffing to support that growth of additional students.
Any questions? No, right now. Ms. Rodriguez.
Quick question. Under student supports with the 7 indicators, we have collaboration with families and student supporters. What does the collaboration with families look like right now?
We are partners entirely with families. So there is not a day that goes by that we are not on the phone with parents.
Okay.
When students do not show up, we have tons of parents coming in for meetings. A lot of them are virtual or phone meetings with parents, but we involve every single parent, and parents are actually a part of the process to even onboard students. Mm-hmm. So they're informed about the program, how they can be supportive of it, how it's different, and really like how they are also a really important part of how their student is going to make progress, because it is really hard, I think, to conceptualize how this is very different. So they have to really be a part of the process right from the beginning to understand how this is a very different type of learning. So we're like educating the parents also on how this works differently, as well as eliciting a lot of their support, especially social emotionally. If that makes sense.
I'm just thinking of it in terms of if you have any best practices about how you get your families involved, what can we take from there and bring out to other programs? Because this is a very different model, but there's a lot of similarities. So I'm just thinking kind of ahead, and what can we take from here that's a best practice about getting families involved and bringing it out to the other school communities. That's why I asked.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all I have right now.
Ms. Larrabee?
Just a question. You said you were going to have 22 graduates,
Mhm.
right, that are on track. What about the other 3? What happens in that instant?
So we have extended learning in the summertime. So those students will be coming all summer long, and hopefully we talked about having a summer graduation in August.
So
And I think-
hopefully they catch up.
Yeah, they should be able to make it by the end of August.
And if they don't?
They will.
They
Just
will.
to, okay.
will.
that's
They
all
will.
right.
They will.
They are.
Yeah.
And the 68% competency rate, how is that measured? Can you just,
So each one of the courses is directly aligned to a competency. So if a
Okay.
student is passing the course and completing the final project, they have to demonstrate a competency.
in front of it?
Yes.
Is it measured once a year, twice a year, quarterly?
Every term, yep.
Every
So
term?
Every term,
Okay.
each student has 4 different TLEs. So they have the opportunity
That's
to
it, yeah.
demonstrate, it could be the several
It's
different
all
competencies.
coming back now, yep, okay. Thank you.
The only question I had was on the data for enrollment. Did you start with all of these students? Has there been any in and out of students, or is it, once you start here, that's what you have?
We have had some students that have transitioned out, just like any other type of program. We have kids that move or kids that want to move on to something else. We've had a few students go to RPA. We've had a few students move on. I think we had another student go to Job Corps. Several students move to other schools. So as soon as we have someone moving out, we have 2 already waiting to get in. So we do have the need of students that we're moving in once we have a student that moves out.
So what is the maximum enrollment? Because they're not all equal.
It's 100.
This year it's
I thought-
supposed to be, it was 60 this year because we have 4 classrooms. So we are over-enrolled right
But
now to 67.
We're going to
We're
100.
going
Next year
to- I
we
knew
want to go
100's
to
still
100
yeah.
students.
I'm only asking that because it says 20, 22, 25, like the numbers aren't necessarily capped at 22, so we should never get
Right.
over that. Has there been anybody denied entry? Like in the
No,
waiting list, you said, but that must be rolling, is that? what
we
I'm
have
guessing?
everyone who applied and wanted a spot enrolled. Unless the student is, right now, we did have a few students who are currently at RPA who did apply and want to attend Evolve. They have to go through the referral back to Derby High School first, and then we would have students come to us after that happens, after that normal process of transition happens.
Interesting. Yeah, that was just interesting. The budget, I know you had here, if you increase to 100, that will have another, but that's 33 kids addition. Is there some other model, some other things tweaking? Because if we only add 1 classroom per se, are we adding 2 classrooms? Like, what would the 100 look like, and where would that be located? I think there was some talk about
Space.
moving something else out or whatever, but is that still a go?
Right. We are looking at, Principal Damaris, we've looked at potential spaces. We have a space earmarked that we probably will do some shifting of another group of a department into the smaller area, and then move into that area, into the larger area, so that we can expand the additional classrooms. So we are in the midst of creating that space. At first, we would know. Last time, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to accommodate 100. As we looked at numbers and we looked at where people are, we thought we can make some shifts to make that change.
Wasn't there something in the grant about 150 or something?
Eventually,
We're
our goal
committing
is
to
to
something,
get,
but that's,
yes, eventually 125 is our goal for next year in our plan.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to accommodate 125. So they're well aware.
but they knew that, so they
Yeah, absolutely.
gave you permission to only
Yes.
go to a certain amount.
Exactly.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yeah, just quick. Can you foresee what our biggest group will be coming up? Like, is it going to be freshmen, sophomore, junior? Well, there are no freshmen, right? Are they freshmen? No,
Sophomores.
sophomore, junior, see, like,
Usually it's sophomores,
Right.
and this year especially, there were a lot of, I guess, like second-year freshmen that moved to the 10th grade, so we did onboard a lot of students who were off track from their 9th grade year. So it's usually priority grade 10 students.
okay.
My only suggestion would be when we look at the budget, one of the concerns I've always had is that this is a costly program relative to other places. So I think articulating it directly what it is, truth in advertising, will help us to know. Like if we took round numbers and it cost $35,000 per student for this program, there'd be logic for somebody saying, well, if we took 35,000 in any other group, we'll be able to do some of the same things. So that's only, as we do the
Yep.
budget, I'd be curious about that. And no further questions?
Is there any chance that we could get the slides for just sent to us via
Yeah,
email so I can actually read them?
They're embedded, aren't they embedded in the?
They are.
Yeah,
They are in the
Board
links?
docs.
Okay,
So they'll
all
go
right,
to
then
the
I'm
Click
fine
on it.
then.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And that front page, Mimi, is
Yep.
on board docs.
It's on board docs, you got it.
It's
Any-
really interesting. They have videos in there too of exemplars of how to do this type of teaching into the competencies, and it breaks it down. It's a really interesting, cool videos in there.
Great. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janet.
We're going to go right into 3.02, discussion, Robert L. Maderas, RPA update.
Is that in here?
No, they're passing it out.
I'm passing it on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, yes, good evening. Okay, so thank you for having me here today. I started off from the beginning by giving you a breakdown of our population. One is just a general breakdown per grade. We're at 224 students at this time. And below that is just a breakdown of special populations, ELL, and special education. So, one of the,
Just-
oh,
that's-
yes.
That's current.
yes.
No, what you started with, or is there somewhere in here that has where you started, or?
No, if you want me to do a before and after, I can, but I just do where we are
It's just,
currently.
I'm seeing this now, which is just another issue of seeing it for the first time, but I'm curious, when I see the number of students at the alternative school at 224, my first question would be, okay, well, how many did we start with in September?
Okay.
Because it begs that question of,
How many transferred
yes,
in?
that's all. Sorry to go.
No,
please
that's
go on.
okay. I'll do that going forward.
We'll email you those numbers.
Sure, thanks.
Yes. Okay. One of our greatest concerns is our attendance. It is something that we have been focusing on, and we've been doing many of the traditional types of, calling homes, visiting homes, etc. And in a minute, I'll go into some other things that we're moving towards, because we see that we need to be think a little bit differently about that. But what we have right here is the students who did enter our school throughout the school year, breakdown by school. The total number, in the second column you see there, the total number of students who did transfer into the school. And then the third column is the number that transferred for attendance, specifically for attendance issues. And the last column there lets you know the percentage of those that came from that school that came specifically for attendance issues. So it is a large number, as you see, and it is something that we are putting our heads together on, making sure that we are addressing this. You can do a comparison. The chart right below, I just took the intakes from last year, just for the chart above that I showed you is from September 1st to March 3rd, as of Friday. The below, you'll see that these were the numbers from September 22nd, from September 2021, to May 2022 from last year. And you'll see that the percentage then of middle school intakes just from September to from September to May was 24.38% for middle school and 34.43% for intakes. For high school intake. So we see that the number has increased, so we have to make sure that we're addressing the specific need that's coming into our school.
So I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
where are the intake numbers for this year?
The intake numbers for this year are in the chart right here. These are the number of intakes per school.
All these kids went through intake? They
Yes.
all showed up at the school and went through intake?
They can't be. You have 172, and then you're saying your enrollment is 223. So you
Right.
didn't have only 50 kids there before.
That's what I'm getting at.
You know what I mean? So we have to.
Oh, I see what
we have
you're
to look at
saying.
the numbers.
Right,
Okay, I will double check that.
okay.
I will double check that. We were at 224. You were at 224, but we had these intakes. 172 students taken at intake who transferred in.
Since September.
So that would
Oh,
mean
no,
that
I'm
in
sorry,
start
I
May,
made
you
an
only have
error.
50
Yeah.
students.
I made an
Yeah,
error.
that would be
I'm sorry.
impossible.
I made an error. I'm sorry about that. I was going too quickly. I apologize for that. But what I will focus on is that the majority of the students have come in for attendance issues. And I will fix that number and I'll get that to you. I will get that to
On that one that you're talking, September, I think it should say 2021
you. Yes.
to May. I'm just
Right.
trying to figure out what
You're
the
correct.
importance of that number being here is.
The importance is showing that the number of students who are coming us specifically for attendance has increased tremendously from last year. So that's something that we have to really work on in addressing in terms of these students have serious attendance issues.
Yeah, that would imply though, you might want to dig a little deeper into this because the way I'm looking at this is that implies that last year from September to May, you had students that got transferred in that didn't have attendance issues.
Correct, they came in
And I
for
don't
different
necessarily
reasons.
think that's an accurate statement. So you might want to just check it.
Yeah,
It could be the sign of the times, it could have been the COVID piece, it could be the online schooling that you get credit for if you're on, you know, in the past when you were doing your schoolwork, but you got credit, like there's got to be something more
Mm-hmm.
than last year from September to May, which is almost the entire school year. However many kids you had, that only 25% of the middle school had and 35% of the high school had attendance issues. I have
Right,
a hard
the
time
others were
believing
for
that.
conduct issues, for not gaining credits at a correct pace to move forward. So that's what the other one's for, but I specifically only included the line for attendance for this purpose of this page.
So that begs the question. If the reason why the kids came from September to May was for conduct issues or whatever that you just said, and currently there's 82% of the Durfee kids are just for attendance, where is the percentage of kids that got transferred last year for conduct? Where are they now? Are they staying at the high school?
Yes. They're still at
They're
the
not
high
being
school.
referred, or they're just not getting allowed to be in?
Do you mean the students who were already brought into RPA? Where are they now?
No, typically this current year. So if we say the kids usually are very similar year to year. So if we get a lot of kids that go to the alternative school for being low credits or conduct issues in any given year, whatever that number is, the following year is probably very similar in my experience being here for years. Under the current data that you're given though, is saying 80% are only for attendance issues. That begs the question of where are those kids that have behavior problems that got transferred every year for the last X amount of years? Are they still staying there? So now the high school has all the behavior problems? and
Oh,
they're
no,
not?
those are coming as well. I just chose to focus on the attendance data. We also have data for those who came in for conduct. But on this page, I was focusing only on attendance. We have, in addition to this, we have students. So in other words, 66 of the 80 students that came from Durfee came specifically for attendance issues. The other percentage of the students came for
All
other
right, let's
reasons.
take that logic. So 14 students since the start of the school year at Durfee High School. 14 out of 2,400. Only 14 got transferred to the alternative school for anything other than attendance, is what I'm reading here.
That was the information that was given by my intake coordinator, yes, that was the main reason. That
Can anybody at the high school verify that?
I'm going to respectfully disagree with that data point. I think that most of the referrals this year up until this portion of the year have to do with conduct. They may very well be an attendance issue at the same time, so they may be ringing a bell saying that they're chronically absent and they're an issue in terms of their behavior.
When they are there, right?
That makes a
Yeah,
little more sense.
So when we get to the midpoint of the year and we get to that credit recovery piece, especially with seniors, right? The profile of the student being referred certainly changes a bit. But on the front end of the year, you know, up through January, it's been behavior.
Yeah, so maybe the issue is, and I don't know what the document is, but I'm assuming that when you guys refer a student out, there's a paper somewhere that says
Yes.
what it, Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Damaris as the principal think the reason why Kevin's gotta go there is. And the answer to that would be what you just said, I would take it. Credit recovery, way behind, conduct, and there's some data to go along with it. What I'm only was saying is what we got here presented to us now, as I'm looking at it for the first time, made it seem like there's the only attendance issues. That's sort of, that's just me speaking, but that's what I feel like this is kind of showing. And I appreciate your clarity. So I think maybe we can get together and get some more info on what the nature of the student
Okay.
would be.
What this
The
kind
strategies.
of what this kind of looks like to me is that we are only using RPA for attendance issues, and we're not using it for anything else. And I'm not saying this to be facetious, but if a kid's not coming to school at Durfee, what makes us think that just changing, based on this, right? What makes us think that just by changing their placement, that all of a sudden that's going to work, right? It looks very much like they're not coming to school, so off to RPA they go, as opposed to there are all these other factors that are going in. So when you're saying they're only students transferred specifically for attendance issues, that's what that looks like to me. Am I the only one that's looking at that?
No,
that
and
way?
I have a follow-up to that.
Clarity.
So, and to add to that is my question being, what happens, because I know it's happening, but the kids that are in their junior year, senior year, whichever, that are struggling immensely at Durfee, okay? And then it's known that they're going to RPA. How many of those students do not make it to intake? And what are we doing to find those kids? That's, because I know
After they've
that's
been referred, you're
after
saying?
they've been referred. So what happens in the middle of them being referred to from Durfee to RPA, whether it's attendance, conduct, whatever, what happens if they don't make it to intake? And that's something that I've had concerns with for a few years now, and I would just like to get, some information on that.
That's where the re-engagement piece is critical, right? Where
right.
we have to do more than just referring is not enough. Some kids don't show up for the meeting multiple times. They're called. We have to have strong re-engagement strategies to bring these kids in to actually access school, because we don't want to give up on them. We don't want them to quit school, but we also need them to come in to do. Sometimes we go to do the intake where they are, or sometimes they're going to come here. If I can just clarify this piece about the attendance, I and certainly you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that we Principal Brooks highlighted attendance because attendance is such a huge issue. I don't think anybody at this table can argue that attendance is a huge issue at RPA. This year, it's the chronic absenteeism is we're not going to sit here and lie. It needs to get better, whether it's daily attendance or the chronic absenteeism. And I think that you were trying to highlight that we're taking students who are already chronic and they're adding to the chronic numbers, but the chronic numbers are much higher than these numbers are here. So we do have a huge attendance issue that needs to be countered with re-engagements and with outside-the-box strategies to get these kids to come into school.
I would say that I understand that. What I would implore people is, I'm trying to say this in as nice a way as possible. If we get information as a school committee, the time of the meeting, this is the type of stuff that happens. Because this says specifically, students transferred specifically for attendance issues. That's very clear to anybody, no matter what school they went to, that's what that says. If we get these things like we should before the meeting, one of us can look at it, the superintendent can review it, other people can review it and say, hey, this doesn't look right. Why don't we get this? That's one thing. Secondly, we've had meetings in this room or this committee prior to this, where I've personally asked for what the information I'm looking for is. That stuff's not in here again. So, for instance, I've asked at every meeting that we've ever had data, I would like to know how many, if a student gets transferred from Durfee High School to your school, I want to know what was his attendance rate while he was at Durfee, and when he went to your school, what is his attendance rate at your school? That's a way that we can compare whether there's something different. Otherwise, we just say the kid's got 80 absences. Well, if 72 of them were from Durfee, and then you've got the rest of the year and you only had them 8, then you're doing something really good with them, some strategy, whatever it is, right? Just like the other way. But we need info and data to make decisions on what is our mission, how are we going to do this, where are we putting our resources. If we don't get it, and I can only say this how many times, we need this information. Go back and watch the prior meetings. I'm going to ask you the same questions as consistently as I can every single meeting. So this is just confusing, so I don't want to belabor the point. I think we need some clarity on this,
Understand.
so let's move on to the next page, please.
Okay, if we could take a look at page 4 for a moment, which continues this, we'll come back to the one
Okay.
previous in a minute. So we were looking at what do we need to do differently. The top shows that we're doing, these are some of the traditional things that have been done. Calling regularly. We have broken up the students by particular lists, and we have staff dedicated to calling those homes, calling the parents at different times of the day. We have home visits by the community facilitator, making visits to the parents, to the family homes as well. And we've increased an interest for students in career exploration opportunities, going to different sites, learning about different job opportunities, and letting them know that, as part of the criteria, you have to have your attendance where it needs to be. We recently had one trip in that line, and that was very, very successful. We have 2 more that are coming up in March and April. So that's something that they're looking forward to, and they know that they have to be there for that. In addition to that, we want to do some out-of-the-box things, and one of them is revitalizing the 3 to 5 program, actually even rebranding it, calling it the Twilight program, and moving towards it being a hybrid of both the current Edgenuity computer program and some of the aspects from the day program that we're going to be putting in, such as some additional social emotional skills, soft skills for job preparation, and also giving them career and exploratory opportunities as well. So we want to expand it and make it more robust for those students who are having trouble coming in during the regular part of the school day. We'll be expanding it won't just be 3 to 5, but actually looking at moving it from like 2 to 6, and providing meals, etc., physical movement, and those types of things. We're also visiting other alt ed schools. We have 5 that we were given suggestion to attend. We narrowed it down to 3 from the descriptions of the schools that looks like they are already in the direction that we would like to be moving towards. And we've contacted those principals and setting up visits for my staff and members of my staff to attend, and myself. And we're also working with Ms. Obenchain to review the Specialized Education Service Incorporated Alternative Education Program. And the bullets show there some of the specific things that they focus on, such as re-engaging students with their education, creating positive peer culture, and providing workplace and skills training. So again, moving towards career exploration a bit more in this school is something that the students have expressed that they would like to have more of, rather than being specifically traditional. So those are some of the out-of-the-box things, different things that we're looking at doing besides the traditional calling homes, visiting homes, etc.
If I may,
Yes.
when did we stop the 3 to 5, and why?
Stop?
Stop the 3 to 5.
We haven't stopped.
We didn't stop it.
So I didn't think so. I
No.
thought you said we were just going, okay.
No, we just wanted to look at how we can make it more
Okay,
robust.
all right.
And yes, yeah, it didn't stop.
Yeah, I think, just to answer your question, I think part of the redesign plan called for a more robust flex pathway to meet the needs of students, whether they're teen moms, they're working, maybe they only need a couple of classes to graduate. So I think Principal Brooks is talking about expanding the 3 to 5, offering new courses, new modes of teaching, offering a little bit more of the personalized learning. And instead of during the pandemic, it was mainly Edgenuity focused in the 3 to 5, but essentially getting more support into that program.
How many students in the 3 to 5 program now?
Right now, there's 7.
7?
7 students in the 3 to 5 program.
And who works that program?
We have 2 teachers. One is an ELA teacher. The other is, and she does most of the ELA and history. And we have a science teacher who does the STEM work with the students.
And that's the whole staff at that time?
At that time, we also have SAC also meets, with the students as well, periodically, like once a week.
During 3 to 5? I'm
Yes.
trying to figure out what the cost is of the 3 to 5. Like a cost of running the 3 to 5 program? What does it cost?
Well, it would be the payment for the teachers during that time, 3 to 5. I'd have to do
It'd be
an exact
stipended.
breakdown. Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't, 7 kids is not,
Well, I'll
that's
tell
not
you,
enough in my mind.
I agree. And we have already started talking about the Twilight program with some of our students, and we already have a number of students who are already interested. We have 11 who, outside of the 7, who are interested in it and who like the sound of it, and so that would be a lot easier for them. It's much more to their liking. So I think that by revitalizing it, and I want to thank Mr. Woodward for working with us on the redesign of it, we can definitely have a lot more.
So why aren't they in now?
Why are they what?
Why aren't they in now? If they fit the need, right, the need's there, why aren't they in it now?
Well, we're talking about looking at the expanding of it and the and how it, you know, the branding of it, and as how it's another alternative. Before, I don't know to what extent it was really advertised as an alternative, and we didn't have before. We're making it sound more interesting and inviting to the students. The guest speakers that we plan on having, the career exploration that we also want to have. Just those features of it have made the students think, oh, well, it's, and it's even though it's going to be more hours to start with 2 to 6. Make them think that's something that I would like to do. Those are things that I would like to have. I would like to have the soft skills that they're going to be working on with the students for job training. Some of the civic skills that we're going to be having as well. The guest speakers that we want to have as well. Still the time for the instruction, but that being automatic, that being rotated in as well. So.
Were we in school last year?
Yes.
Like the pandemic piece of excuses of pandemic, why we didn't do certain things was 2 years ago. So like last year we were in school, right?
First
Yes.
year back.
The first year
Yes.
back, right. So I'm having a hard time with, we've been back since last year, September. We had plans and consultants and school visits and everything else going back 3 years prior. Pandemic's over now, as far as that goes. All of these plans that I've sat here and listened to, and it's March of this year, we got 7 kids in the 3 to 5 program, and we're just thinking that that's okay.
Some students have finished the 3 to 5 program. There are some students who used it and they have finished their credits and they're already online. They're already on the pathway to graduate. They use it to they went to regular school transitionals during the school day, and then they took some 3 to 5 afterwards, and they were able to
And
finish
where
their
is that
credits.
data?
I can give you that. I can get that data for you.
So I think you're understanding my point, and I'm sorry for being a little frustrated.
It's
but
okay.
We've been down this road way too long, as far as I'm concerned, with alternative education. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, on consultants and programs and this and that and the other thing. Literally, and you can check the numbers. And I've sat here and listened to all these great ideas, and then we don't follow through on the ideas that we said were so great when we studied them, and then we come up with something different, and then maybe we're going to plan something else. Like with the alternative ed, I'm getting personally tired of all the same, oh, we're going to do this, we'll do that, we'll do this, and nothing ever changes. So part of my frustration is just because it's time, over time, and we need the data to show what's happening before this meeting, so we can say, yeah, look, we took 25 kids. Last year we had this big thing that I wanted to know how many kids ramped up their credits and this and that. So we had to get a meeting, we didn't have the meeting, then we had this, then we had to get that. To this day, until right now, I still don't have any idea how many kids are in your program that ramped up classes, took Edgenuity. I see some of it here, but I'm looking at it for the first time.
Okay.
But my point is, if you go back and watch last year's meetings, we had this discussion already. So we should have started the year in September, like, I know this is what the committee wants, this is the angle we're gonna go in, this is how we're gonna, it seems like we're going backwards instead of forwards. 3-4 years ago, I sat here at one of the meetings and we had, I think, 80 or 90 graduates, something like that. And we all sang the praises of everybody involved, that whatever's going on, we're still getting these kids to graduate. It was getting almost 100 kids. And then now last year was the dismal, and I'm not sure this year is going to be any better because I don't have the data, but there's something going on. I don't know what it is, but there's something going on, and I don't want to go backwards. I want to go
But that's
forwards.
the number of seniors. That will fluctuate. So you're not going to have 150 seniors in that program every year to graduate 100 students.
Right.
That's going to fluctuate each year. It depends on the number of seniors that you have each year.
Right, and what was happening in the models that we had 3-4 years ago there was too many consultant names, I don't want to say the wrong ones, but the models that we used to have were that we were going to do intensive credit recovery, use Edgenuity for that purpose, to do competency-based education, so that we would be taking, you might only have 25 seniors to start with, but the kids are going to bubble up, as we call it, with their credits through a variety of sources, and most of it was Edgenuity or the like, to do more competency-based stuff, so that the kid that's 18 years old as a sophomore can bubble his credits up and become a senior. So the trajectory 3-4 years ago was we only started with X amount of seniors, and then we did a lot of extra seniors based on all the things that was happening, both at the high school, working in conjunction with the alternative school to get those kids up there.
Right.
And we're, I think, going backwards.
This year, we did have 177 competency-based tests passed. So we are using that, you know, and we're using it regularly with our students.
All levels? All levels, correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We mean for Edgenuity?
Yeah,
All
all
levels for
levels, all
Edgenuity.
levels.
Yeah, all levels for Edgenuity. And the juniors and seniors who were working on, particularly on getting their credits right, we have 177 competency-based tests passed.
And it begs the question, and I know it's not here, how many students bubbled up? I asked that question last year. How many students went from 9th grade to 10th grade, 9th grade to 11th grade, 10th grade to 12th grade? If the things are happening and we don't necessarily see them, we can't necessarily give credit for it or say we're going to put money into these types of programs, whatever it is. So you can obviously see that I'm frustrated, but I don't want to belabor the point. You have the Edgenuity piece here. I have a whole slew of questions that I don't want to ask today related to the data here.
Okay.
So I've asked before, and I'll do it offline. We need more info on the actual usage of the Edgenuity platform.
I'll be happy to supply it. Seeing what it is that you want, I'll be happy to provide it.
Anybody else have any thoughts, questions? We could always do things between meetings, and I would encourage the members to send Mrs. Ponce an email asking for any further clarifications for this so that Ms. Brooks can work on that with her team.
Okay.
The last thing on the page of conduct and actions, if you want to just address that.
Yes. Well, it just gives numbers about conduct. There was 106 out-of-school suspensions. The information that is there, we see that we use restorative justice as often as we possibly can if it's appropriate. We rely on the Fall River Public School District Handbook Code of Conduct for assigning appropriate suspension or appropriate response to any types of conduct situations. And we also listen carefully to the mitigating facts in any hearings that take place. So these are the numbers about things that we've covered so far and how things were handled in terms of specific conduct issues.
Any questions? Ms. Rodriguez?
Is this just for this year?
Yes.
I would like to ask for by grade, like you have the different grades. So even if it's like one report should show your 7, 8, 9, if that's what you consider middle school, and the other one being the high school. Looking at your data that you presented, you've got twice as many high school kids as middle school kids. So therefore, when you show us the data,
You want it broken down?
I would like it broken down, and I'm assuming that it would reflect the nature of the numbers.
Okay.
That's just an assumption. I'd like also a request of how many fights there were at the school and what each corresponding result was from the
I
fight.
actually, I will say that I actually had that data, but it wasn't, it needed to be updated. Mr. Michael Isaac was out today, but I had asked him for, I think there were 16, but I'll
No problem. And if
I'll get it for you for tomorrow.
as
He'll be
when
in.
you say in the handbook, the code of conduct in the handbook, so this is I've worked with Mrs. Ponce on giving my impression of what I think should happen, is that across every school, we need to enter data and conduct in the same fashion with the same consistency so we can understand what is what. So I'm hoping that whatever you present is in the computer. So if I get into a fight, there's never a time where that fight doesn't get in the computer as a fight, or whatever it is. Like, it needs to go in that restorative justice or not, or whatever you use. When we look at the conduct referrals, it should go in the same for all schools, so we can start to compare what's happening. And the fighting one is a big one that I have my eye on. But once you give it broken down, we may have more questions. Any other thoughts on the?
Just quick, I think
Sure,
I'm a little
Ms. Lavin.
confused on 196 emergency removals.
What is,
So,
that was my question.
okay,
What does that,
yeah.
what does that
What
mean?
does that mean?
An emergency removal is when a student does something that is, at that moment, that they have to be removed from the building for a particular reason. It was maybe they presented danger to another student, to a teacher, to themselves, whatever the case may be.
Okay, not permanent.
No,
No,
not
Obviously,
permanent.
okay, so I was.
A day or
Right.
two
Day,
max.
2 days, so it
Yes.
doesn't
By law.
constitute suspension.
Yes,
It's-
if it results in a suspension, it will be counted as a day of the suspension.
Also to put that some of this is information. Some of the information that comes for our school, it applies also to the school that the student went to. So some of the data comes with the student to the school. So for instance, the very first one, 106 out-of-school suspensions, some were for RPA, but some came with them from the previous school that they were at. So that's, and when they come to RPA, that data comes with them in Power School.
Right, I think I'd like to see that broken down as
Just
well.
RPA data.
RPA data, yeah, we don't,
Well, I'll speak for myself, that I would like to get both, because I think it's relative to say, like, so
Separate column.
I had X amount of students that had this, like, they were suspended at Talbot X times, and here this time. Like, I like to see both, but maybe in two separate type of situations.
right, two
But
areas.
the emergency removal one just makes me question.
Right,
There's 196 emergency removals.
right,
Under the law, if I'm a parent and you call me to say, little Johnny has to go home because it's an emergency removal based on safety, this and that, he's gotta go home. If you do that, he's suspended automatically.
Yep.
So the
Wait.
196 emergency removals and 106
Right.
out-of-school suspensions don't jive.
right.
There's 90 student difference there.
That's why I asked if
Yeah.
it was suspension.
Only, no. Only if it results in a suspension, it is counted as a suspension. Sometimes you might have to remove 2 children for if something happened, and while you investigate, for a day or 2, you might have to
Okay.
remove them. They may not, it may not result in a
The
suspension.
day of.
There's a letter, an emergency removal letter that you give to the parents, there's a notice, etc. But that's not necessarily gonna yield in a suspension. It's not.
I would ask for clarification. So
Okay.
my
We
thing on that
ran
is
into this a
when,
few years
anytime
ago.
a child, for instance, even, and please anybody at the table correct me if I'm wrong. If a child is having a dysregulation emotionally, and I have to call mom and say, Mom, you gotta come pick him up. In the old days, you would say, Mom, come pick him up, that's a dismissal. In the current day, the way the law reads now is it's a suspension.
That's absolutely right.
And that same theory is anytime, and the way I look at it, is anytime a child is emergency removed for that day, for their periods or whatever, that has to be coded as a suspension. Would be could stand to be correct.
I
That's
will
why I
get-
was saying, I
I'll
think
get
that
that.
number, if you follow my logic of that's how it is supposed to go, that's where the difference is, but I would ask you to check it and just let
Yes,
us know. I'm not
you're
criticizing anybody, but I think
Removing
gotta
a
be
student
careful.
from class is considered a suspension. You absolutely, if you're gonna call a parent and say they're dysregulated, they need to go home, that is absolutely a suspension. That needs to be coded as such.
I think that was a typo on there, because I just looked it up, and it's 106 for both suspensions and emergency removals.
Can you repeat that again?
It's
It matches the
106.
106.
106.
Gotcha, so,
But that's not,
so we take the
the
onion.
106 is not,
Let's say what Mr. Woodward said is
Yes,
correct.
yes, so that.
Here's the next piece of when we
Yep.
peel back the onion. So if what Mr. Woodward says is correct, that you had 106 emergency removals and you had 106 out-of-school suspensions, that begs the question that every single suspension was an emergency removal, which
Right.
is another problem.
Yeah, that's not
every
the-
emergency room resulted in
suspension.
suspension.
Right,
Which is what I was
because
saying too,
so then
yes.
that would mean you had no suspensions in your entire school except for emergency removals, which is supposed to be the safety issue of the school or whatever. There's not the same.
Right.
You have to have some suspensions because the
did.
kid wasn't out of control. He just got to go home suspended. That he or she, like, so
yeah,
that
and
begs
and that's not dictated here. That's not.
Right, what he's saying is, right.
But I just think that begs the question for future meetings to say, make sure that all the schools, not you happen to be here today, but this could be mentioned to any principal to make sure that what your school's doing, his school's doing, her school's doing, like, just so to get everybody on the same page. It's not being critical of
That's
your
okay.
personal
That's okay.
information. So, does anyone have any other questions?
I have a lot of questions, but they have all to do with these numbers, and so I don't want to ask those questions until
We get
we have some
accurate
accurate numbers,
numbers.
because then my questions may not exist, so I
Correct.
don't think it's.
So we're just gonna reserve, we're gonna end this, but we're gonna reserve the right to, once we get the info, I'd ask it to get sent to everybody.
Okay.
And then if we have further questions, rather than having another meeting, we can give our questions to Mrs. Ponce and she can get clarification answers.
And just quickly, just give us a little info on what the detentions look like, please.
On what a detention will look like?
Yep.
Well, detentions usually work with the students having some kind of, they do research work sometimes, and into, I know that, I actually have some
No,
samples.
you can send it to us.
Okay.
You can send it to, like, what time of day, when are they there?
It's
Stuff.
after school,
Just get us the info.
after school.
Yep.
Do a write-up and send it.
Okay.
Just send it to us.
Restorative justice too, like
Yes.
what practices do
Yep.
we use,
Yes.
what does that look like?
A little bit on, I think all of them would be good to have,
Explain each one.
explain each one.
What is that?
The last question I have is, last year I know that we always have graduation at a school. And last year I was blindsided myself with all of a sudden it was gonna be at a site, not a school. And I'll weigh in myself that I believe that we have plenty of buildings and school buildings, that graduation for this program should be at a school. I don't know if that's in the plans, but I don't wanna get blindsided like last time with, it's gonna be at a site other than a school.
No, I did discuss it already with Ms. Ponce. It is going to be, I didn't realize that you felt you were blindsided. I didn't know that. I just thought we were just trying to do something special for the students, but we will do something special for them in the school.
Thank you.
I know it seems like a silly point, but if our whole purpose is to get our kids to feel like they still are part of the school community, when we celebrate them and we do it outside of where their school community is, it feels very much like, oh no, you guys really are othered. That's what that feels like. That's what that looks like in the community. I know that's not the intent, but that's absolutely what it looks like. And so when we bring them and we can celebrate them in a school community, this has been theirs, right? This is what they've been working towards. They are a part of this community. Then it doesn't appear to be like they're being othered. But when we do it outside of that, then it does feel that way.
I meant to ask this earlier with staffing. So I look at the list of job openings, and it seems like you still have a lot of vacancies at one point recently when I looked. Are you fully staffed with certified people, teaching full loads? Like, what does your staffing look like?
We're not fully staffed with certified people. We do have some teachers who are teaching with waivers, and I've done everything I can to make sure I could find certified people. It's been very, very difficult. So,
Do you have any, how about in special education, do you have any
Across
people
the
on staff?
district.
That are-
no, I
Across the
don't.
district.
I don't.
So you have no special ed certified people in your whole building?
I have 2 in middle school. I do not have in high school for the inclusion.
So like, just looking at your data before in my head, you had more high school kids than the middle school. And you had high percentages, like 30-some% of kids
34.
are,
And we don't
34.
have any.
whatever, that have special education. We have no certified people. So
Across the district.
that just worries me,
too.
for one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's worrisome, that the kids aren't getting the services that they need. And
I
they're
feel the
entitled
same.
to, so we gotta figure out a way to correct that. I'm sure we'll talk about it at
It's
make
not
people-
unique,
can't make people
it's,
work.
it's an incredible issue. ESL and special educators are right now very, very difficult to recruit. Any district is
Got it.
running short.
No, I hear you. My last question is, during the year, have you had any staff members that have been injured on duty?
I did.
Recent, how, like, in a fight, or how was the, like,
Yes, I did.
not like fall down, like accident, like they slipped on ice or something?
Yes, I did recently. There was one person who that applies
And are
to.
they out on leave, or what are they?
They did come back with the doctor's approval, and the just today, as a matter of fact, the doctor said that they would need maybe 1 full week to have some time at home.
Yeah. And then when this happens, you must do a report or something.
I
like
did.
An accident report of what the
Yes.
rationale was. So, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, and
Appreciate
I'll
it.
get those numbers changed too.
Thank you. Thank you all. Item number 3.03, potential partnerships to strengthen programs for our highest needs students. Ms. Ms. Obenchain or Mrs. Ponce? Which one? You
Ms.
want?
Obenchain,
All right, you're on.
a pro.
Okay, so nice to be back with the committee, second month, and no. So what I wanted to start discussing with the subcommittee tonight is the next steps, right, for me, because yes, I only started in November, but from the get-go, everybody, not only on the school committee, but also in the buildings, superintendent, everybody felt like our special education program needs some immediate changes to be made.
Attention.
Yes,
Yes.
attention. Thank you,
Good
Sarah. But the volume in Fall River is very big. So again, after doing my own homework by listening and learning and really relying on the staff that we have here, and I thank Principal Raposo for coming tonight, as well as one of our special education supervisors, Ms. Elliott, because without them, I wouldn't be able to make the recommendations that I'm going to make. I want to be fully transparent in that I know I just started a few months ago, but we're getting to the point where we have to start thinking about next year, right? So the time is now to start planning. What I did was I did some research on how do we target our highest needs students. And these are the new students in our substantially separate programs, right? This is where the Walker Report put all their emphasis. When I talked to the DESE, they, in their walkthroughs in our TFM, they put our emphasis on that. And then again, listening and learning in the buildings. So I'm sure people have heard before that there are collaboratives that you can partner with. They come in, they take over a classroom, you get certain spaces, and they help to staff and develop programming for you. What I was looking for is really someone to partner with us. I don't want people doing the work for us, because then those people leave and then we're back to square one. Mr. Aguiar, to your point, you bring in consultants, they give their input, and then they leave. I was really looking for programs that would partner with us. The first one I want to share with you is Special Education Services Incorporated. They go by SESI. I don't know, were you guys able to open the links to the document that I had shared? Okay, so SESI is nationwide, primarily focused on in the West Coast, but then on the East Coast, it's Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. They just started opening up 2 in-district classrooms, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, in Connecticut, and they are in conversations with Springfield in Massachusetts. So what they have to offer, they run alternative schools in both Rhode Island and in Bridgewater, Mass. They run, it's called High Roads. They are very familiar with working with high needs students. The students in our social emotional programs are the students that I want to talk about the partnership with. They offer not only the staffing that we desperately need, but the structures and programming to meet the needs of a student with this kind of social emotional background. Right? They have a PBIS model that they have shown to work with students. It is consistent. It's called CASE, and it stands for something. I don't have that off the top of my head. They have an academic kind of rotation station where students are getting SEL built into the academic component. So when I was thinking about our district, and they will use our curriculum for academics so students will not fall behind academically. They partner with the building administrators, so they are not, like I said, on their island alone. They follow whatever the principal wants to implement for them, but they just provide us the expertise and the knowledge of working with these students and the staffing who's trained to do the work. Right now, our substantially separate programs across the district are significantly understaffed in the fact of we have very few certified teachers, and that's a major concern for me. And I wish I had a magic wand that they would appear next week when we post positions. They're not. So that's another thing we do have to work on, but in the interim I have to start thinking, if I don't have the staff currently, what can we work on to get the students set up for success next year? Brian and I have talked at length about this, and he is 100% on board to bring in what they call an in-district classroom. They will take, if we do 2 classrooms, they would take 10 students in each room, a teacher, 2 paraprofessionals, a social worker, and an on-site program director. Not only to work with our students, but to partner, like I said, with the staff to be able to get them up to speed. So if this program does meet the needs of our students, that in the future we can implement it ourselves. Take those structures, take those processes and procedures, and continue on training our own staff. So I initially met with them. Then I brought in both Brian and Allison to ask them questions and to meet with them. They did come to the building today just to come see our programs, to see if they could help us with the students that we're talking about. And then below, I also gave you a little rationale, right? The growth of our students in these populations is something I haven't seen before. So out of the 100 students that transferred in to Fall River, this was probably the end of February when I got these numbers, 27 of them came into the district with substantially separate classrooms for social emotional needs on their IEPs.
The union meeting, do you know where it is?
I don't.
Not here.
So 27 of them came in. Based on our current numbers, so we have 33 students enrolled at Talbot right now in our social emotional classrooms. There's 3 of them. At Doran, we have, in the middle school, it will be 22. They only have 1 classroom, 6 through 8. So already that's 55 students next year. We only have 4 classrooms in the district. I can't go over 12 students per room for DESE regulations, so I already need to add another classroom. Even adding another classroom, we're already going to be like maxed out pretty quickly, and if we have the intake of kids like we had this year alone, and this isn't students that we're recommending, this is just students that happen to come to us, we're going to need to open that second classroom pretty quickly. So knowing we are already short-staffed, this is a high need for us. We need to think outside the box and doing something differently. I do hope that if we are to partner with experts in the field, that rethinking discipline that the DESE wants us to focus on, this is an alternative way so students aren't getting suspended as much as they are out of these programs. I know it's a lot of information, so I would like to ask questions for this particular set of this particular piece of the partnership, because there's 3 different components.
Can you just clarify that Doran is 27 students in 6 through 8?
20, they have,
Do they have 3 rooms?
they have
have 4
1
rooms.
room right now. So I should say, so
But in middle
this
school, they
is,
have 1.
yeah, this is projections for next year. Sorry, Kevin, I can give you, I just.
But then you
don't-
said 12 is the max, so it
Right.
kind of made it confusing to me that.
Yes, so that's the problem that we have right now. So Doran, right now,
They have an elementary, so I'm wondering if with the numbers coming up.
yeah, so that's what it is. So the
Yeah.
bubble class that's coming up from 5th grade to the middle school classroom, there's 10 alone for next year that are currently in 5th grade that wouldn't be in that single room, because Doran has it broken down a little bit differently.
And is it like partial, so like they're not all in there at one time?
So
Because your
the
12
6th
number would be still, even if there was 10, it would still be 17.
we have a waiver right now from the DESE. There's 14 currently
I
in
see.
there.
So you had to get a waiver to go over that piece?
Yes.
Got it, I understand.
Yes.
Any other questions on this particular piece? This first one? No, sorry. I'll just give you my comment. I think it's something we need to do, 100%. As frustrating as I am in the past, we did a lot of consultants for the alternative piece, but we haven't done this type of thing. We did the Walker report, which was the Walker report. It was short money and it wasn't necessarily in depth enough. Like, I think this is where we need to go for, lay it on the table, let's explain what our challenges are, and then we can solve the problem. What we do sometimes here is we forget about the problem or just like beat around the bush and go on the edges. I'd rather just say, we got an issue, like, we don't have special education staff. We just said that, we admitted that. So when is the recommendation gonna come to the committee to say, how are we gonna incentivize people? Why is somebody gonna leave Somerset to come over here? To make less money and have more headaches? Like, when is the recommendation gonna come to say, we have to do something different? I get the contract's the contract, every teacher's a teacher, but if we've been having this issue for how long, when are we gonna step up? And so,
We've been starting those
Separate
conversations
issue,
on
I'm
our
just saying,
own, but it's not ready to come here yet.
whatever it is, I
but-
think we need to do something different.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're gonna be sitting here in September saying, we're short-staffed in special education.
I
I
agree.
digress.
start, right?
Yep.
I do have a question.
Question, Ms. Roberts.
So these will still be our kids.
Only
and
our kids.
program.
Yes.
And I ask that because in other districts, what's happened, it's become like, this particular school district has a collaborative classroom at this particular school, but those kids are from the collaborative, and they just get filtered into that
And
school.
we only get so many spots in
Right,
those rooms.
but these are our kids.
That is why
Yeah.
we
It's
looked
not a
into this.
And they're also very
Specifically.
open to, collaborating with me as a school principal and our staff. And so I think it's a good opportunity where we can literally learn from them as
Yeah.
well, because this is their wheelhouse, right? So it'll be our students, but they're really coming in with a different level of training, support, and they seem really open and willing to work side by side, so that they're building our capacity along the way as well. But rather than just doing it in a consultation model, they're literally going to come here and do it, right? And with our students. So I think it's.
And Brian and I are going to go see one of the Connecticut programs, our in-district classrooms ourselves. And when we talked to them, we said we want to see the data that shows the kids are making more progress, right, from what we're seeing now. So.
What's the sorry?
No, go ahead.
What's the longest program? Like what state? Longest running?
Oh, the longest running. I'd have to look into that. I don't know off the top
How long?
of my head.
About?
Just the three
Oh.
people at the table
Oh,
have been doing
25
this.
years?
25
Yeah.
years.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
they were
so-
all.
And all
yeah.
those three people, two of them started as paraprofessionals and have
Yes.
been with. So I mean,
They're all home.
really,
girl.
it's that it sounds like one of the programs in Connecticut has been very long-standing, and they're really infused into the culture of the school, and they've just kind of stayed on. Whereas in some cases, a district might partner with them for a few years. Other cases, they may stay on for a bit, but definitely a long time. Yeah.
So the idea of being infused in the culture of the school, that's where I'm going to go with that conversation, right? That this is not, I just want to make sure that we're not taking our sub-separate kids and creating basically a whole school within a school, and then those kids are separate from anything.
We had
else that we
conversations
do.
today about inclusion,
Yeah,
right?
so
We
it's-
did, and
right.
what that was going to
Yeah.
look like for students. Like what Brian and his cluster coordinator and Allison, the structures that they put together, we just don't have the manpower to see the follow through of it, and they can't be there all the time, all day, every day to make sure. So yes, they're not going to be something separate. Yes, they run the program, right? That's what we need right now. But they are willing to come to meetings with Brian every single week. They'll be around the IEP tables with families, just like we would be, right? They will help transition them back into inclusion if that means they go with them, or they, help them develop point sheets and stuff to take with them. It sounds like they'll participate in our PD when we have PD here.
And when the rubber meets the road, he's still the principal.
Yes.
So the students are under him, like a kid needs to get suspended, has to come
We,
to him.
Just
yeah, so we
kids.
did
You
ask
know,
them
so
that.
that's
Like, what
such a-
about
Yeah, I
the
asked that
discipline
today.
piece?
They can make, so they'll support with, for instance, contacting a parent, making some phone calls, handling the initial part of the incident, but at the end of the day, they're going to connect with me around, all right, what do we think the consequence is going to be, let's say, if it comes to that point. So, and they seem very open to, if we were to move forward with them, I know that they'd want to get planning because they really want to build it with our input. It's not sort of just here's what we bring, they really are open to that piece so that they can, we talked today about all those topics, inclusion opportunities for kids, different things like that.
I'm just looking at it as a partner with, as opposed to, here comes this group and they're going to do this instead of.
Yeah.
But it
Right.
sounds like that's
Yeah.
exactly where, okay.
Yeah, and we kind of emphasized, even during our conversations with them today, how we want to make sure that the students emphasize skills, especially as they're getting older. We want them to generalize these social emotional skills with opportunities for inclusion, but they want it to be very individualized for what Fall River is looking for longevity, like we had shared with consultation as well. Later on, if we're phasing that out, we want the staff, we want to grow our own staff, like how, majority of their supervisors, like you had said, started out as paraprofessionals and they worked their way up through the company, which is really great.
All right, worth a shot. Next time, next one.
So this is still with SESI. The other piece that they do is called Capacity Enhancement Services, and this is directly for RPA. They are part of Catapult Learning, so this would be actually a group of consultants that would come in to RPA and work alongside. So Celeste would have Clarice would have a partner for principal. The VPs would have some partners, and so would the teachers, right? So, but there again, you go for where the experts are. They already run 2 alternative programs, one in Rhode Island, one in Massachusetts, long-standing. We've had Fall River students go to these programs. When I look at the lift that is needed at RPA, it is heavy. And not only because we're short-staffed, but just it's a whole different model. It's a whole different way, we need to rebuild and rethink alternative education. So I'd like to learn from people who have done that successfully, right? I think I put in my, rationale, we have approximately 200 students, it's a little over 200 students, but out of those 200, 78 of them are special education students. And when I look at our PRS complaints, coming out of RPA, a lot of it has to do on the structures, the discipline piece, the instructional components. Like we need to make sure that we need to do something different, because if we keep doing the same thing, we can't get different results, right? And again, Clarice has been super open to working with them primarily into attendance, engagement, and instruction. Those are the 3 goals that I had asked for them to consider with us. So this would involve a lot of staff training, a lot of working in the schools alongside of staff, so they're not going to be running a classroom, but they will work on how do we schedule, the students at RPA? What does that look like? What does 3 to 5 look like? And is that meeting the requirements for graduation? They will help us develop data collection systems so that we can have this information readily available, because they already do it. What do they use to get kids in? We need to have something. Why do students want to come to RPA? If I'm already chronically absent at Durfee, you send me to RPA, why do I want to come to school? What's the difference? So what can we offer them, again, with Clarice, what she's already doing, right? With the career exploration pieces and other alternatives. But we need more robust and programming, and then we need more data collection that shows that we're headed in the right direction.
Questions?
Outcome data. No, not on this.
The only
piece.
comment I'd make on that is you heard what I just said about the consultants before. So whatever we do here, we have to not forget where we've been. So granted, Evolve was at the other school. So Evolve that's now at Durfee was housed at RPA, just as a past history for you. So what was happening is they were doing grants to try to get to everything that you put here for the last 5 years or 6 years. I was told this is what that grant was doing, to reimagine what alternative ed looks like. So all of the things you just mentioned, I've sat here for 5 years and heard hundreds of thousands of dollars of the same. And then Evolve was part of it, and then Evolve now is at Durfee. So I get that we might need something different. All I would ask is that you let them know that there has been work done, because if I'm working in a school, and again, we're gonna go, another group of consultants coming in, so just a heads up, just kind of have them understand the history of where it's been. And granted, we had a different principal, so everything changes in time. You get a different principal, different people, no matter what school it's at, you're gonna do things a little different. I feel like we kind of lost all of the momentum we had from the old piece, and that's not to place blame on anybody.
Right.
But I don't want you telling them to come in and not understand that that's been going on.
And honestly, Ceci is willing to come to full committee, they're willing to come to subcommittee, if you want to, again, give them your historical perspective too, because I don't have that, so.
I think that Mrs. Ponce and her team can certainly give you
But
that.
they're willing to
I just
come.
didn't want it to go by without saying,
Yep.
why all of a sudden I'm fine
I
with this,
know.
but there might be some issues. And the last one is the South Coast
So
Education
the
Program.
the last partnership that I wanted to talk about tonight is with our South Coast Educational Collaborative. And this is really to work with a task force that we have Fall River administrators, teachers, related service providers who have already said, yes, Lori, I'm on board, I want to be part of this task force, to look at our ASD and language-based programs. And that's really going to be the internal work that we do. South Coast would work with the task force specifically to, again, brainstorm with us, let us, give us some ideas if we don't have them ourselves, use research to help us make determinations, because we're starting from the ground up, right? We need program descriptions, we need new names, right? We need all of those pieces. And again, we have a group of people that want to do the work ourselves. We just want a thought partner, and that's what South Coast is for us. They're local, they're in our schools. We have contracted with them for our assistive tech already. So a lot of the assistive tech people are in our classrooms that we want to work with anyway. And again, the principals of these classrooms, they really want the support. So again, I think that was an easy one. We have 50 students, 50 substantially separate classrooms for students with autism or language-based across the district. That's a lot of classrooms to consider. So based on numbers again, everything is growing, so we're going to need additional classrooms. I need to get the right classrooms to meet the needs of the students, talk about inclusion, move kids in and out, and kind of develop that.
Questions?
Can I just make
Ms.
a
Rodriguez.
recommendation? So on the task force, can we include students and parents?
Yes, let me get the foundation laid. Like, let me see how this is going to go. I've already kind of mapped a few things out myself, but yes, I think there will be critical
Start the
times to bring,
conversations first, but then
yeah,
bring them
of
to the
course, to
table
bring
as part
students
of-
and parent voice, of
Yeah.
course.
Ms. Larrabee, any questions? No. So I would 100% support this as well. I think it's thinking outside the box. I told you when you got the job, I wanted to be bold. These are some bold steps to at least acknowledge where we are. If we don't admit that we have some shortcomings, we're just going to keep doing the same old, same old. We can't afford the same old, same old. So I applaud you for bringing these things forward.
Honestly, I hope that we will be able to recruit and retain staff once we kind of settle things down here. Why? People will want to stay here because they know the classrooms that they're in, they know the students that they're working with, and they feel like they have the support to get the job done.
My last question on all of these is, financially, I know we have the money, but are these, because they're like consulting, they just can go to them, or do we have to bid these, or do you know that yet?
It's contracts, we would have to bring
So
it.
it's-
That's why we want it referred to the full committee. We'll do our little spiel at the meeting, and then we
Just,
want
I
to
would
bring
say when it
forth
gets to the full committee,
contract.
come up with the, like,
Yes,
more
proposal.
details. I know that we have the money, but like,
Yep.
we wouldn't want you to come and say it's gonna cost us $700,000.
I didn't
want
to get that far until we had,
Yeah,
talked to
I
subcommittee
totally
and
agree.
thought.
So, motion to refer, seconded,
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Also voted. So it passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
I had a comment about this, and you went so fast.
Well, we're trying to get to these job descriptions before,
Can I just make one comment
Absolutely.
about it? Okay. So my one comment is that I really appreciate that you broke it up into the needs of the SEL classrooms and the needs of the autism language-based classrooms, because for a long time, we haven't done that. And so we kind of lumped all of those pieces together. And so I just wanted to make a point that I really appreciate that somebody's taking a really solid look at it. We know that folks in the buildings have done that, but that hasn't always happened at this level. So I just want to say thank you for doing that.
last up is a bunch of job descriptions.
Yeah, so so part of what I did when I was trying to listen and learn, I met with groups that weren't the teaching groups, right? I met with our special ed clerks, I met with our evaluation team chairs, our cluster coordinators and BCBAs, the special ed supervisors. And one thing I wanted them to look at was their job description and say, does this job description describe what you do or what you feel like you should be doing in your current role? And it was unanimously either no or yes, most of it, but I don't know what some of it means, right? So part of what we're doing, and we're starting this week with a task force on processes and procedures for special education, I said to the team, listen, we can't assign processes and procedures or responsibilities to our processes and procedures if you guys don't know what your roles are. And if what we have on paper doesn't clearly define what you do, because when we onboard new staff, that's what they're looking at, right? So I don't know if you want to see, I have the old job descriptions that I have kind of highlighted. A lot of it is just rewording to make it more clear based on what the staff told me. So
Can I just try to help to streamline this, because I think
Sure.
I'm going to assume a few things, but basically you are updating all of these job descriptions to more reflect not only what is happening, but what you would want as the director and the superintendent wants as
Yes.
part of the leadership. So my
And I-
only
go ahead.
suggestion would be for the full committee to have a, what do you call it when this, like you see what was deleted?
Like before and after, yeah.
You know what I'm saying, something like that, I would
Like a
recommend,
side by
but we don't need it right
Oh,
now.
you don't need it now.
But what I
Okay,
would
I
say
have
is if
all
we
that.
can, for the
Okay.
full committee,
Sure.
we just get like the part that shows
Sure.
what was different.
Sure.
And then I would like to make a recommendation that we forward all of these to the next school committee meeting.
Okay.
Because we could go on and, I don't know anything better than you, and the superintendent, so I know what your mission is that these are not accurate. And I want it to be accurate, I want it to be what you need, so I'd like to make a recommendation that we approve all these, forward them, and then the full committee will know that
Yep.
we support it, but this is not rocket science, this is doing the right thing, so.
Motion
That's
to
all.
refer.
Motion to
Second.
refer, seconded, all in favor? Aye,
And we'll
opposed,
get
so
both,
voted.
correct?
Yes, we will give you the one.
I
all
think
the
if you send them
corrected- all
both,
the
I think it'll be
corrections.
very clear to the committee, like, here's the pieces that changed. I would ask that some information come forth as far as what happens. So I'm in a position currently, one of these, and then you change my job description now. What are the ramifications of such a thing? Is it that they just
Right,
just-
I'm working with
they grin and
HR.
bear it or whatever, like, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
we don't want to create a new problem if there's
Side
something
trend.
substantial.
Just to speak to that, in many cases, Ms. Obenchain's research is, what are you doing now? What are the process and duties that you actually do in this job that you're already in? And it's so, it did involve an exchange and feedback from the people who are actually doing the jobs now. So I don't think it's a heavy lift in terms of, it's not like we're piling in a bunch of extra duties onto an existing job. It's more a reflection of, let's make it accurate.
And the last sentence always says, any other duties
Yes.
that, it might just be articulating those duties a little clearer.
Right.
Which I get, I think it makes the most sense. Does anyone have any new business? The only question I would have for the superintendent is, this committee is alternative ed, special education, early college, which we've had meetings on. I'm curious, and it doesn't have to be answered now, but which committee would early ed fall under? So part of me wants to, as I'm seeing these type of meetings where we're talking about special education and the like, that which committee would we actually have a discussion about early childhood? So that,
Right. It depends on what, we actually have had that discussion internally, because if we're talking about physical spaces, that would go through F&L, right? If we're talking about the instructional piece of, then that would go through that, or the special ed side of it, then that would come through this one. So I do think that it.
my recommendation, for what it's worth, and you don't have to answer it now or take it, I think the way early ed is, the trajectory of it, we need a committee that's in charge of early ed. And I'm not opposed to doing the work and having it added to this, like, comma, and we'll have a special meetings for that
special
only.
programs.
But because what,
Oh,
I find like the instructional is different,
Right.
unless we just said like the instructional committee and early childhood. But I think early childhood really needs its own, like, I have so many questions on moving forward, how to do it,
Yep.
what we're doing, and it's kind of like, I think we need some clarity, that's all.
Okay.
So, motion to adjourn? Made and seconded, all in favor, aye, opposed, so voted, thank you.
Aye, and I
Have a
think-
great day, everyone, thank you very much.
One night,
You too, thank you.
good meeting.